Hello everyone. So in this lecture, we will be talking about amino acids, that what they exactly are and how these amino acids are joined together to form long chains of proteins. And also we will be discussing about the different classes of amino acids by looking onto the structure of each of these amino acids in detail. So let's just start first with understanding that what is an amino acid. So amino acids are basically called the building blocks of proteins. Why? Because if you can just imagine a building, you know that a building is formed by the combination of bricks. So one brick is joined with another, and that leads to the formation of a big building. So similarly, when we are talking about proteins, there are tiny molecules called amino acids, which are joined together so that long chains of these proteins can be formed. Now, the amino acids are the organic compounds, and they combine to form proteins, as we just discussed. Now, if we talk about the number of amino acids that are existing in nature, so there are a total of 20 standard amino acids. These 20 standard amino acids have a general structure, which we will be discussing in a while. And this general structure is common to all the amino acids, but these amino acids, they differ from each other depending on the R group that is present. Now, what is this R group? That we will also discuss in a while. So a total of 20 standard amino acids are there, and these amino acids, they join together in different patterns and different sequences to form millions and millions of proteins. So if we look onto the general structure of an amino acid, we will see that there is a carbon in the center, and this is known as the alpha carbon. Now, because you know that carbon has a valency of 4, so there are going to be 4 groups attached to this carbon. Now, this carbon is also known as the chiral carbon. So there are 2 important groups which are always attached to this carbon in an amino acid. So what are these 2 groups? The first group is the amino group, and the second group is the carboxyl group. Now, because this is an amino group and this carboxyl acid group is basically an acid, that is why this molecule is known as an amino acid, right? Amino is also there and acidic group is also there. Apart from that, the third group attached is a hydrogen atom. And the fourth group, to balance out the valency, is an R group. Now, this R group is something that varies among these 20 standard amino acids. But everything else, this portion of the amino acid is going to be the same in all the 20 amino acids. Only this R group is going to vary. And that is what we are going to discuss in this lecture, that what exactly is this R group in different types of amino acids and what properties does it give to the amino acid, right? Okay, let's move on now. Okay, so when we talk about the amino acids existing under the living conditions, which are called as the physiological pH range, under the living conditions inside the living bodies, the amino acids, they exist in the form of Zwitter ions, right? Zwitter ions basically means that these 2 groups which are attached to the amino acid, they will be present in its ionic form. Like the COOH group will be existing as COO negative, as the carboxyl ion group, right? Because the hydrogen has been removed from it. And also the amino group will be present in this form with a positive charge on it. So under physiological pH range, both the carboxylic acid and the amino groups of the amino acids, they are completely ionized. So always remember this. So like a question can come that what exactly is the form in which the amino acids exist under the physiological pH range? Your answer should be that it exists in the form of Zwitter ion. Also, the amino acids are amphoteric in nature. Now, because you know that there is an amino group, basic group present, and also an acidic group present in the form of carboxylic acid, and it is having both these properties, like an acid and a base, that is why this molecule is known as an amphoteric molecule. Always remember this thing. All right, let's move on. Now, talking about the bond that is existing between 2 amino acids. How does the amino acids, they join together to form long chains of proteins that we discussed in the first slide? So that happens via the peptide bond. So let's suppose that this is your first amino acid. Now you can just correlate the structure of the amino acid with the structure that I've just explained to you. So this is a carbon. It has an amino group attached. It has this carboxyl group attached. This is the hydrogen and this is the fourth group. Let's suppose it is R1. And talking about the second amino acid with which this first amino acid has to bind, you can also see that it is also having an amino group, a carboxyl group, and a hydrogen atom, and also an R group. This is R2. We have just made it R1 and R2 just to distinguish that, okay, these two amino acids are different from each other. So what happens is that water loss happens. So OH from one amino acid and hydrogen from the next amino acid, it is removed in the form of a water molecule. And the remaining molecule joins together. And now you can see that there is this bond formation happening between the NH group of one amino acid and CO group of the other amino acid. So this bond that is forming is known as the CO-NH bond, and this bond has been named as the peptide bond, right? So peptide bond is basically the bond that forms between the two amino acids by the elimination of water molecule. All right, now let's move on. So now we will be discussing about each of the amino acids. So there are a lot of amino acids that exist in the nature because they are some of the forms of the other amino acids. But in totality, there are only 20 standard amino acids that exist. And on your screen, you can see the figures of these 20 amino acids. So discussing about all of them in detail, let's just see the first class now. So the first class of amino acids that is there, it is basically the aliphatic amino acids. Now, aliphatic amino acids are basically the amino acids which are not having any rings or aromatic chains in them. They are just normal aliphatic chains which are having hydrocarbon chains present in them. So there are a total of 5 amino acids that are there under this category. So these are the glycine, alanine, valine, leucine, and isoleucine. So if you look onto the structures of these amino acids, you can correlate it with whatever I have taught you before in the first and the second slide, that these amino acids are having a common structure, as you can see. So this part of the amino acids is same. Can you see that? Right, so this is same in all the amino acids, and how these are differing from each other, that is happening due to the variations in the R group. Now, glycine is something which is the simplest amino acid. Why? Because the R group is just a hydrogen atom. It is nothing complicated. So glycine is not having any specific side chain, and the alpha carbon atom, basically this one, this contains 2 hydrogens attached to it. So this is the simplest amino acid. Talking about the next one, that is alanine. You can see that alanine is having 1 methyl group present as the R group. Talking about valine, valine basically has a 3 carbon molecule attached as the R group, right? Leucine is having a 4 carbon side chain. The isoleucine is also having a 4 carbon side chain. The only difference between leucine and isoleucine is in the orientation, in the branching, right? So you can just memorize it that glycine is the simplest amino acid. R group, if it is methyl group, then that is alanine. If onto these methyl group, 2 more methyl groups get attached, that becomes valine. And if there is 1 more carbon being inserted in between the chain here, then that becomes leucine. And there is a little bit of change in the branching positions, that becomes isoleucine. So all these aliphatic amino acids, they are hydrophobic and they are non-polar in nature. And these show presence of simple and branched chain, as we just discussed. So there are some simple chains and also there are some branched chains, as you can see here. So this was about the aliphatic amino acids. Now let's move on to the next one. So next category of amino acids is the aromatic amino acids. So basically aromatic amino acids are those amino acids which are having an aromatic side chain as the R group. So talking about the phenylalanine, tyrosine and tryptophan. So these are the 3 amino acids that are categorized under aromatic amino acids. Phenylalanine, if you look into it, it is having a benzyl group, right? So R group is having this methyl group and that is attached to a benzene ring, right? And if we talk about tyrosine, tyrosine can be called as a phenylalanine with an extra hydroxyl group added to it, right? And talking about the last one, that is tryptophan. So tryptophan is having two rings. You can see that. So there are two rings present in tryptophan, and one of these rings contains a nitrogen atom like that. All right. So when I was talking about tyrosine, this is a phenylalanine with an added hydroxyl group. And this hydroxyl group is present in the trans position, which is relative to the methyl group. And tryptophan is having two rings. One of the rings is having a nitrogen atom present. So this was about the aromatic amino acids. Let's move on to the next category. So the next category is the acidic amino acids. So acidic amino acids, there are two. One is the aspartic acid and the other one is the glutamic acid. Now, because these are the ionic forms, so we are calling them as aspartate and glutamate. So the R group in the aspartate is basically having the CH2 group along with an extra carboxyl group other than the one which is present already as the general structure. And talking about glutamate, this is exactly like aspartate, except the fact that it is having an additional carbon present between it. Now, the amide form of this aspartate is called asparagine, and the amide form of glutamate is known as the glutamine. So always remember this thing. Let's move on to the next one. So the next category is the basic amino acids. So basic amino acids, obviously, they will be basic in nature. Now that extra basic character will be imparted due to the presence of these amino groups present, right? So there are three amino acids that are the basic amino acids. The first one is lysine, then we have arginine, and then we have histidine. If you look into the structure of lysine, you will see that there are 4 carbons present, right? And along with this extra nitrogen atom. And in case of arginine, you can see that it is having a configuration like this, where we have some carbons and nitrogens are also present in excess. And if we talk about the histidine, it is having a cyclic kind of structure with the nitrogens present in it. Now, if we talk about histidine, it is having this ring, which is basically a 5-membered ring, right? And this 5-membered ring is called as the imidazole ring. So always remember that histidine is having an imidazole ring, right? Okay. Let's move on now. So the next category of the amino acids is the sulfur containing amino acids. So what are the sulfur containing amino acids? So there are 2 of them, cysteine and methionine. So if we talk about cysteine, cysteine is just an alanine with a sulfhydryl group present. Now what is this sulfhydryl group? Basically the SH group. So these amino acids, cysteine and methionine, are the amino acids which are having sulfur present in them, right? So if you look into the structure of alanine that I just taught you in some of the slides, if you correlate the structure of cysteine, you will come to know that cysteine is nothing else but alanine with S group present, right? Sulfhydryl group present. And methionine is basically having a methyl group present attached to the sulfur, right? So there are these 2 carbons, and then there is a sulfur, and then there is a methyl group attached to it. So I hope this is clear, and let's move on now. So this was about the sulfur containing amino acids. So there are 2 of them. The next category is the hydroxyl group containing amino acids. So the hydroxyl group is basically the OH group. So these are the amino acids that are having OH group present. So we have serine and we have threonine. So these are the 2 amino acids having OH group present. So if you look into the structure of serine, there are this one C group is present along with an OH group. And then we have this threonine, which is having the OH group, which is obviously should be there because this is a hydroxyl group containing amino acid, and there is a methyl group also present here. So this was about the amino acids that contain hydroxyl group. Moving on to the next category. The last one is the amino acid. So amino acid is something which is an odd one out, and amino acid is nothing else but the proline. So proline is the amino acid which is known as an amino acid, and this is the odd one out among all the amino acids. It is having 4 carbons present with the alpha amino group, and it is having nitrogen also present. So this is the proline, right? So this is not called as the amino, but rather it is known as amino. So always remember this thing. Okay, so that was about these amino acids. But before we end this lecture, I would just like to add it here that when we talk about the hydroxyl group containing amino acids, apart from serine and threonine, this uh, tyrosine can also be added in this category because it is also having an OH group present in its structure. Okay. So that was about the amino acids. Thank you so much.